Letter 18. Displays of Greatest Magnificence. Dear Lady Mary, you were born in one of the finest homes in England, the great Thoresby Hall, located in the lush Nottinghamshire countryside. This Palladian house, with its 275 rooms, sits on an estate of hundreds of acres, complete with a deer park, a 65-acre lake, and a quarter-mile canal that runs through formal gardens and feeds numerous fountains. You are thus well positioned to make the comparison between your palatial ancestral home and the Grand Seigneur's home in which you stayed in Adirna. As usual, no element escaped your observant eyes, and you provide a very detailed description of its architecture and furnishings. Every house, great and small, is divided into two distinct parts, which only join together by a narrow passage. The first house has a large court before it, and open galleries all round it, which is to me a thing very agreeable. This gallery leads to all the chambers, which are commonly large, and with 2 rows of windows, the first being of painted glass. This is the house belonging to the Lord, and the adjoining one is called the harem, that is, the ladies' apartment, more gay and splendid, both in painting and furniture. The second row of windows are very low, with grates like those of convents. They use no hangings, the rooms being all wainscoted with cedar set off with silver nails or painted with flowers, which open in many places with folding doors and serve for cabinets, I think, more conveniently than ours. Between the windows are little arches to set pots of perfume or baskets of flour. But what pleases me best is the fashion of having marble fountains in the lower part of the room, which throws up several spouts of water, giving, at the same time, an agreeable coolness and a pleasant dashing sound. Each house has a bagnio, which consists in 2 or 3 little rooms. Your description is very similar to the restored Ottoman homes that I have visited in Turkey. Many outstanding examples of these houses have now been turned into museums in towns such as Kütahya, Birgi, Sivas, Tokat, and Diyarbakir. These house museums have allowed me to imagine what life must have been like in them, in the same way you were curious as to how people lived in that Grand Seigneur's home in Adirna. I have learned from these well-restored beauties how walls were lime-washed white, and how the floors were covered with meadows of bright kaleems. I noted the great detail paid to the gaily painted scenes on walls and wooden ceilings, and how the built-in cupboards stored the fabrics of life, such as napkins and towels, as well as the copper pots and vases such as you saw in Adirna. During the day, the bedding linens and blankets of the entire family would also be stored in these cupboards, freeing up the floor space to create an airy and accommodating space for living, known as the sofa, for all the communal activities of the family, receiving guests, eating, bouncing babies, prayer, and handiwork, just as it is still done in village homes to this day. What especially captured your fancy in Turkish homes were their furnishings, especially the sedir, the traditional low benches that are set along the window wall, as well as the projecting alcoves on the upper floors. The rooms are all spread with Persian carpets and raised at one end of them about 2 feet. This is the sofa, and is laid with a richer sort of carpet, and all around it a sort of couch raised half a foot, covered with rich silk. Round this are placed, standing against the wall, 2 rows of cushions, the very first large, and the next little ones. And here the Turks display their greatest magnificence. These seats are so convenient and easy that I believe I shall never endure chairs as long as I live. Indeed, to tuck your legs under you on the low bench of a sedir amidst the joyous burst of color of the kaleem cushions, surrounded by chattering friends drinking tea, or to snuggle in the cocoon of a window alcove to watch the streetscape below, are 2 of the small and perfect samples of pleasurable life to be experienced in Turkey. Those restored Ottoman mansions are indeed very impressive. But my favorite homes in Turkey are the more simple and modest ones, the ones where I have had the honor of being a guest. Turkish homes are havens of peace, foyers of family joy, and the bricks of the whole society. The interiors of Turkish houses are always light and airy, comfortable and friendly. They can be furnished with the lavish Baroque-style overstuffed furniture that modern urban Turks seem to favor. Or they can be outfitted with simple kalim-covered sedir low banquettes. No matter what the taste in furniture, the common bond in both modern and traditional homes will be the presence of magnificent carpets. The Turks never seem to wander far from their nomadic origins, and these carpets, whether they are machine-made or hand-woven, will always be spectacular examples. Furthermore, in every home, no matter its station, there will be flowers. In a plastic bouquet on a side table, in window boxes, outside the entry door planted in olive oil cans, on curtains, on rugs, in pictures, on teapots, or in those little alcove arches you mentioned, Lady Mary. Inside of homes, flowers become the symbol of life and God's goodness, His joyful gift of surprising color and sweet smell, nourished by the rains of His heaven, and blossoming like the family that takes root in the blessed soil of the Turkish home. Above all, every home, from castle to village cabin, will be spotlessly clean. In contrast to the muddy streets outside, and as an antithesis to their chaos, Turkish homes are immaculate and pristine. You are perfectly right, Lady Mary, when you state, "'Tis true, they are not at all solicitous to beautify the outsides of their houses." It never fails to amaze me that no matter how plain and decrepit the outside of the building appears, no matter how mucky, noisy, or aggressive is the street running in front of it, once you step into a Turkish home, there is a sense of peace in a place where order and spotless cleanliness reigns. No one may enter a Turkish home without first removing his street shoes, so that none of the grime of that grubby street can penetrate the sanctum of purity. You noted this as well, Lady Mary. The houses of the great Turkish ladies are kept clean, with as much nicety as those in Holland. But there are two homes I have visited in Turkey which stand out in my mind. I have already spoken to you about what it is like to be taken into a Turkish home and be adopted by a family. And every time you enter a Turkish home, no matter how short the visit, it is as if you are being adopted in some way by the family. Such was the case in the village of Yörük, near Safranbolu, a village of breathtaking beauty, and a living museum, stage set of fine 18th century Ottoman wooden homes. I spent the afternoon peeling hazelnuts in the courtyard of one of these huge homes, in the company of the head of the household. Later on, he invited us inside for tea. This immense traditional Ottoman home, built to house 4 extended families, had been since transformed for more Republican tastes. There was a tuvalet a la franga, Western-style toilet, and a deep freezer chest sat with pride in the middle of the sofa space. The owner's very aged mother observed all from her perch in the alcove window seat, sitting to catch the cool breezes, contemplating the beauty of the surrounding countryside, and following the conversations amongst us. Right before sunset, I accompanied the daughter of the family to the nearby pasture to drive the cows home to store them in the courtyard of the house, the hayat. This word, hayat, means life, and it comprises a ground-floor paved yard, ventilated by wooden lattices. Keeping livestock and baskets of peeled hazelnuts close to the life of the home, the people sleeping above it, seemed all too familiar and normal for this Midwesterner. The second home that particularly impressed me consisted of one room. It belonged to the custodian of the Sheh Turasan Dervish Lodge outside of Kayseri, which was built for the confraternity of this holy man active in the area in the 13th century. The Dervish Lodge is a mystic place, set on a dramatic windswept mountaintop, overlooking the vast and dusty plain where the soldiers of Tancred stormed forth to the Holy Land on the First Crusade in 1097. It is perhaps the beauty of the countryside, the isolated quietude, the onus of history, and the legend of the dervish himself that all join to confer to this spot a rare spirituality. After visiting the dervish lodge, I was invited into the caretaker's home for tea. As his wife bustled about to prepare it, I observed the single room which constituted the home. It was very large, decorated simply with turquoise carpeting the color of Seljuk tiles, whitewashed walls, and Kalim cushions propped against the walls. There were no pictures to clutter the walls, no blaring radio or television, and no freestanding furniture except for the pot-bellied heating stove in the middle of the room. There was a silence so total that I could hear the echoed memory of the Crusaders' sighs, carried from the plain below in the rustling of the wind in the trees, the clank of their armor in the chatter of birds, and the resonance of their beating drums in the faint buzzing of the bees from the nearby hives. There was not one piece of lint on that carpet, not one shadow of a stain on it or on the walls. All emphasis in this room was put on the people who animated it and on the conversations shared. It is certain that I was the first foreigner ever to step foot in that room, and I was treated no less royally than the victorious Seljuk Sultan Kalach Arslan himself. The mistress of the house came in with her tray laden with tea and fresh fruit, and knelt with grace and solemnity to place it on the floor in front of us. She shyly smiled at me and poured it with the same innate and natural elegance of any well-bred Thorsby lady, I can assure you. In this way you can see, Lady Mary, how a one-room Turkish home can be as rich as a castle of 275 rooms, or the palace of a grand seigneur, and how it is in their homes that Turks can display their greatest magnificence. Sincerely yours, Kadria Branning.